You're looking to really understand something without, spending ages searching.
Yeah, get straight to the good stuff.
Exactly. Well, today we're plunging straight into Ryoma Maeda's 2012 album, Fantastic Suicide. We've got his own thoughts on it, plus some insights from Natalie Music to guide us.
Great. And what grabs you straight away, I think, is just how many different sounds Ryoma Maeda pulls together here.
Right, he's also known as milky-chu to some people.
Exactly. But this one, Fantastic Suicide, is under his own name. It's produced by his brother, World's End Girlfriend. That's a key relationship we should probably touch on.
Definitely. And released on Virgin Babylon Records.
Yeah.
Plus, you had COM.A, a mixing, and a remix from Surf. So lots of collaboration happening.
A real team effort. And the album's description itself is pretty wild.
It is. Entertainment music of frustration drawn with a boy's naked desires, violence, and freedom. Wow.
Quite the mission statement. It promises this mix of rock, punk, techno, chaotic but catchy.
And even the cover art by HRFM apparently taps into that whole idea.
Yeah, visualizing the concept. Okay, so where do we start? Track 1.
Let's do it. I want to hear your joke. What's the story with that title? Sounds familiar, but wrong.
Well, it's a deliberate twist, right? On the Jackson 5's I Want You Back.
Huh.
But it's more than just the title. Apparently the chorus melody itself actually borrows and twists parts of the original Jackson 5 melody.
Really? That's interesting. Kind of sets the stage for unexpected connections then.
Totally. A surprising way to kick things off. Makes you think.
It does. Then you get Stay Free, I'm Not Free.
Yeah.
That's clearly nodding to the Clash song Stay Free.
Yeah, another obvious reference.
But musically, here's where it gets kind of weird. It uses a canon progression.
Like Pachelbel's canon, that kind of thing?
Yeah, that repeating harmonic pattern, which usually feels quite comfortable, almost classical. But here it's underpinning all these complex synth lines.
Huh. So comfort meets complexity.
Right. And I actually remember trying to play the shoulder keyboard part for this live with Ryoma and Romantic Suiciders, that guitar thing. It was honestly a beast to play those lines on while moving around.
Huh. That's brilliant. A little behind-the-scenes insight into making this stuff work live. It shows how he takes something familiar, like that progression, and builds something really unique on top.
Totally. Okay, next. Rollover Beethovenian. This one's a biggie, right?
Oh, yeah. Huge streaming numbers. Over 800,000 plays on Spotify last time I checked.
And there's that music video connection, too, isn't there? With Maury Chak's character.
Universal Rabbit. Often gets called Gloomy Bear by mistake in translation, apparently.
Right, Universal Rabbit. So that visual link definitely boosted its popularity, you think?
Has to have, yeah. Connects the music to something people already recognize. Maybe that blend of the unexpected music with a familiar visual is part of its appeal, even within that chaos description.
Yeah, could be. That's a hook. Then, do you remember Punkish Radio?
Okay, no points for guessing that reference. Ramones.
Do you remember Rock and Roll Radio? Clear as day. And Maeda himself points out nods in the arrangement, like the rhythm and the break, the intro. It's very deliberate.
It really shows his roots, doesn't it? A clear love for that punk energy and structure. He's not just sampling sounds, he's tapping into the whole vibe.
Like you said, a musical conversation. Okay, Goodnight Metal Guru.
T-Rex. Another direct lift for the title.
And this one has guest vocals from E.L. Ryoma mentioned admiring Mark Bolan's, get this, obscene feeling and pop elements.
Obscene feeling. Interesting choice of words. What do you reckon he means? Maybe that kind of raw, flamboyant charisma Bolan had, that slightly dangerous edge mixed with killer pop hooks?
Yeah, that makes sense. That mix of wildness and catchiness again.
Seems to be a running theme.
Okay, this title's clever. Ballad for 21st Century Girl.
Go on.
Ryoma explained it's a double reference. Segway Sputnik did 21st Century Boy.
Right.
Which was itself a reference to T-Rex's 20th Century Boy.
Ah, layers. Like musical inception.
Totally. It shows he's really thinking about this lineage, playing with the history. It's not random.
It's like a little wink to those who know their rock history. Okay, what's next?
We Will Funk You.
Let me guess. Queen?
Obviously. But this one has a backstory. It's apparently a rework of a Queen cover he did with a Phantom unit called Tropico Q.
A Phantom unit, like an unofficial side project.
Sounds like it. With Hayashi from Plustex Wheezebox. So this track existed in some form before.
Suggests he revisits old ideas, lets them evolve. Interesting.
Then I Feel Mood.
James Brown's I Feel Good, twisted again.
Yep. And this one features guitar from Takuto of the band About Tess. Another collaboration.
Bringing in different players definitely adds texture, doesn't it? Different skills, different sounds, enriching the whole thing.
Absolutely. Now for a real curveball. For her Tennessee Waltz.
Tennessee Waltz, like the old American country song.
That's the one. Apparently, Ryoma has a surprising soft spot for 34 time signatures.
Huh. Didn't expect that.
And get this, he played the pianica solo himself in the second half. Totally improvised.
Wow. Okay, so country waltz time and improvised melodica, that definitely broadens the palette, shows his range.
It really does. Then, Meat is Mahler.
Okay, that one I don't recognize, not the Smiths.
No, it's not a direct quote this time. It's actually a rearrangement of a remix of Mahler's Symphony No. 1.
Mahler, as in Gustav Mahler. Classical stuff.
Yep. Talk about a left turn.
That really hammers home the anything goes vibe of the album, doesn't it? Pushing boundaries all over the place.
Totally. Okay, nearly there. Are you experienced in my life?
Hendrix, easy one.
Clear reference. But here's a nice detail. Ryoma felt the track was missing something. So he asked a university friend, Imenishi, to write and record a spoken word part.
Oh, cool. How did that turn out?
Ryoma apparently felt it really lifted the whole track, made it special.
Spoken word can do that. Adds a different layer, maybe more personal or narrative. Especially coming from a friend.
Yeah, adds a unique texture. And finally, we loop back almost to the start with I Want to Your Joke, Surf Remix.
Just a remix by Surf, then.
Pretty much. But Ryoma shared a little anecdote about seeing Surf's first ever live show at Liquid Room. So still that sense of community and connection.
It all ties together, doesn't it? The
Yeah.
collaborations, the references. It feels like a very interconnected project.
So yeah, looking at the production side again, World's End, Girlfriend producing, COM.A mixing, Surf remixing, a lot of trusted hands involved.
And don't forget those bonus tracks. Natalie Music mentioned if you bought it from the Virgin Babylon online shop on Supermarket, you got MP3s for 10 extra tracks.
10, wow. That's practically another album's worth of material for the real enthusiast.
Definitely encourages a deeper dive.
Okay, let's dig into some of what Ryoma himself said about all this in that interview piece. He mentioned this was the first album under his full name since one way back in the early 2000s.
Right, on Yoshihiro Hano's label, which helps explain the different names he uses.
Yeah, Milch of Source, milky-chu. Why do artists do that, use different monikers?
Often it's about signaling different styles or intentions, you know? He said Ryoma Maeda is for the more experimental stuff, maybe less focused on just dance music.
Whereas Milch of Source is more for the dance floor.
Seems like it. It's a way to frame expectations for the listener, and maybe for himself creatively, too.
Makes sense. He also talked early influences, the Blue Hearts, the Timers, especially the Timers. He said they were a real shock. Then RC Succession, his love for Kiyoshiro Imawano, strong Japanese rock roots there.
Absolutely. And you can kind of hear that raw energy, maybe that rebellious streak underpinning even the electronic tracks, don't you think?
Yeah, feels like it's buried in there somewhere. And get this story about his first band back home.
Where was home?
Go-To Islands in Nagasaki. They practiced in a warehouse using a generator for power.
No way. That's proper DIY.
And their first gig on terraced fields.
Haha. Amazing. That paints such a picture. A world away from Tokyo clubs.
Definitely grounds the artist a bit, doesn't it? Then later, high school, he started mixing programming with band sounds.
Ah, the transition begins.
Influenced by YMO's Reunion, big deal in Japan, Ryuichi Sakamoto, but also the Mad Capsule Markets and Nine Inch Nails.
Okay, that's a potent mix.
Yeah.
YMO, Sakamoto's Elegance, and then the industrial aggression of Mad Capsule Markets and NIN. You can see how his sound started to form.
Yeah, a restless kind of experimentation. He even mentioned a bit of sibling rivalry with World's End Girlfriend back in the day.
Trying to outdo each other.
Yeah, musically, just playfully pushing each other.
That can be a powerful dynamic, actually. It probably helped both of them hone their styles. And clearly, they ended up collaborating really well later on.
For sure. He also explained the difference between milky-chu, which was meant to be complex dance music, and then going back to Milch of Source, partly for tracks that worked better live.
Ah, so practical considerations, too. Thinking of playing it out.
Yeah, the reality of performance. But interestingly, he said Fantastic Suicide itself wasn't consciously made for dancing.
Oh. What was the goal then?
More about just evoking fun and excitement, getting people hyped up, emotionally.
Okay, so less about the physical movement, more about the feeling. That explains some of the wild energy and maybe the density of ideas. It's about sparking something in your head.
Exactly. And he talked about his approach changing, focusing more on just enjoying the process, getting himself excited by the music, rather than getting stuck on technical perfection.
That sounds freeing. More intuitive, maybe? less analytical.
Yeah, seems like it. And when working with his brother, World's End Girlfriend, he said they just share tracks. Not much explanation needed.
Just send the file over.
Apparently. And the feedback was mostly about arrangement tweaks. It suggests a really deep, almost unspoken understanding between them.
That's the sign of a great partnership, trusting each other's instincts.
What's really wild is that the concept for the album Fantastic Suicide mostly came together after the music was done.
Seriously? That seems backwards.
Right. Usually you start with a concept. But here, it sounds like the music came first and the themes just sort of emerged from it.
The music dictated the concept. Interesting.
And choosing Surf for the remix, he deliberately picked a track that wasn't like Surf's usual style. He wanted that contrast.
Wanted to see what would happen when you threw those different styles together. Shows he's open to unexpected takes on his own work.
Definitely. Okay, so let's unpack that title itself. Fantastic Suicide. He said there were two main ideas behind it.
Okay, lay them on me.
First, it represents that chaotic mix of a boy's desires. You know, the frustration, violence, freedom, but also love for rock music. That's what inspired the artwork.
The HRFM cover? With the kid shooting the water gun?
Yeah, and all those elements like music notes maybe bursting out of his head. It captures that explosion of youthful energy.
Got it. That makes sense visually. What's the second meaning?
The second idea was this concept of a rock carnival.
A rock carnival.
Yeah. And that's what led to borrowing all those famous rock song titles. It was inspired partly by David Bowie's Rock and Roll Suicide.
Ah, okay. So the title borrowing wasn't random. It was part of this carnival theme, a celebration, and maybe a deconstruction of rock history.
Exactly. But here's the key thing again. Most of those titles were chosen after the tracks were finished.
So he made the music, then thought, what famous rock title kind of fits the vibe of this track?
Pretty much, based on loose associations. The exception was, I wonder your joke, that Jackson 5 idea was there earlier. But mostly, music first, referential title second.
Fascinating process. It really puts the focus on the sound itself, with the titles acting like these extra layers of commentary or flavor.
He also described his music, maybe more broadly, as dance music that cannot be repeated.
What's that mean? Like, too complex to replicate?
Partly that, maybe, but he linked it to his own tendency to get bored easily. He doesn't want to just make the same beat over and over.
Wants to keep things constantly shifting, unpredictable.
Yeah. He mentioned admiring Mike Patton, from Faith No More, Mr. Bungle.
Oh yeah, Patton's stuff is famously eclectic and chaotic, but somehow holds together.
Right. Maeda sees a similar thing there, that balance between seeming randomness and underlying structure. That's what he aims for. Unrepeatable dance music.
You can definitely hear that in the album. Just when you lock into a groove, it morphs into something else entirely. It keeps you on your toes.
He also used this phrase, too detailed punk.
Too detailed punk? What's that?
His term for enjoying really complex arrangements that, on the surface, might sound simple or have a punk energy. He compared his process to making a hot pot.
Like Nubba Mono, throwing everything in.
Exactly. Sampling heavily, layering sounds, lots of ingredients, creating this dense but hopefully satisfying result.
Can you think of a track where that too detailed punk idea really comes across?
Maybe Roll Over Beethoven again. It has that driving energy, but listen closely.
And it's tons of little electronic details, complex rhythms happening underneath the main beat.
Exactly. Sounds punchy, but it's intricately built. That's the too detailed part.
I like that. He also noted that he and his brother, World's End Girlfriend, both love complex structures in music.
Yeah, a shared aesthetic there.
But their emotional direction differs. He sees his own stuff as more bright and broken, while his brother leans towards darker themes.
Interesting distinction. Even collaborating closely, their core artistic personalities are distinct.
Yeah, same tools, different outcomes.
Ryoma felt Fantastic Suicide, compared to maybe earlier work, was more pop, with clearer melodies.
A conscious shift towards accessibility, or just catchiness.
Maybe a bit of both. He put it down to wanting to entertain people, wanting to amuse his friends, perhaps just growing up a bit.
That's quite relatable, making music to connect with your immediate circle.
Yeah, he specifically mentioned wanting to make stuff that his friends, musicians and non-musicians alike, would just find funny or interesting. That seemed really important.
Less about impressing critics, more about sparking joy or curiosity in people he knows. A very human motivation.
Totally. And looking ahead, he even had plans for the Ryoma Maeda moniker.
Oh yeah, what's next?
A band setup, drums, and 2 shoulder keyboards.
2 guitars, nice.
His vision. A synth version of Guitar Wolf. complete with leather jackets.
Ha ha ha. Okay, I would pay to see that. Synth punk chaos.
Wouldn't you? It shows he's still thinking about evolving, trying new formats.
Definitely not standing still.
And he wrapped up by saying, basically, making music is just fundamental for him. He goes through self-doubt, then moments of feeling like a genius when it clicks.
The classic artist roller coaster.
Right. And he's not interested in just making tracks and hoarding them. It's about the creating and the sharing.
That drive seems really core to who he is as an artist.
So yeah, fantastic Suicide. It's this whirlwind of sound, isn't it? It's genres smashing together, all these nods to music history.
Yeah, brought to life with his brother and these other collaborators. It really is a journey through that youthful energy, that frustration, but also pure sonic fun.
And that artwork really does capture it, that chaotic burst.
It makes you think, too, about how he uses those iconic rock titles. They aren't just labels, they're like springboards, right?
Springboards for something totally different. Taking the familiar and making it strange and new.
Which leads to a final thought, maybe. Could that whole act of borrowing, twisting, and transforming these famous titles and sounds, could that itself be a kind of fantastic suicide for musical rules?
Ooh, interesting. Like blowing up conventions from the inside.
Yeah. Using the past to create something radically future-facing, opening up new sonic possibilities by playing with the old ones.
Definitely something to chew on next time you listen.
そしたらその涙がまた新たな海を作り出して